Hello and welcome back to 100 Yards of Football, Sports Talk Radio. I'm your producer, Jeremiah Long, and joining me to talk about the dual sport legend, the man who so many of us were inspired by for so long, Mr. Bo Jackson. It's two people that I'm inspired by. Our original host and founder, Mr. Football himself, Vincent Turner, and an NFL and college legend himself, Mr. Harper LaBelle. How's it going, guys?
Hey, how you doing today, Mr. Long? I see you got the Tennessee logo behind you. Go Vols.
And this is what I'll say real quick about that. It's December 2nd, 2024, when we're recording this particular Legends video. So you may be watching this 10 years in the future because it's about Bo Jackson, right? So you can watch it anytime. It's evergreen. But at this very moment, the Vols have made it into the very first college football playoff that's ever going to happen. They have done it through their grit. And it's not been easy, and I got to shout out the Vols. So, guys, I will let y'all take it from there because it's about grit and it's about being just an incredibly well-rounded player that we talked today about Bo Jackson.
Well, it's not a field of 64, but a field of 12, and being in it, Jeremiah, you are showing the enthusiasm that there are so many people around the country that want to have that same feeling, whether it be in Georgia, at SMU, in Dallas, in Boise. There's a lot of things that are happening in college football this week, and we get to be a part of that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But for now, we're talking about one of the college athletes that goes on to a pro career in a dual sport. You talk about very few people were able to do this. We've had Brian Jordan on as a guest. We'd love to have Dion on someday. We might be able to work that out. But our guest today, Vincent Edward Bo Jackson, born in 1962 on November 30th. So he just had a birthday a couple days ago. So this is a guy that was a difference maker in so many different ways. And again, I thank you for the assignments that you give. Hey, let's talk about this guy or that guy. And we kind of go back and forth every now and then. Let's not do that now. Or yes, absolutely. This is one of those ones. There's never a wrong time to talk about Bo because he played football. The fall belongs to college and professional sports, obviously, with football being a part of it. And Bo is certainly part of that as well. And from spring to fall, baseball, and about both collegiately, he's a great college baseball player. And also, obviously, in the major leagues with Kansas City, with Chicago, and then he finished his career. His last year of playing was with the California Angels. But thank you for the assignment, Vincent. This guy, the more you learn about Bo Jackson, the more you love it.
When you look about an athlete that was explosive, had 4.2 speed in the 40, outstanding in leaping ability. I don't know what his vertical was, but just a very physical, explosive football player, not only on the football field, also on the baseball diamond with some of the catches he made once he got with the Kansas City Royals. Outstanding player, outstanding ambassador to the University of Auburn, just a super guy that took his game to the next level once he got to the pros.
Well, Vincent Edward Bo Jackson was one of 8 children. He was born 6th overall. He attended McAndrew High School in McCalla in Alabama, and he was a 3-sport athlete in high school. He played football, he played baseball, and he also ran track. Now, baseball and track are at the same time, so I'm not sure how his training regiment was during those days, but his numbers were absolutely fantastic. He rushed for 1,175 yards as a running back when he was a senior in high school. He hit 20 home runs in 25 games his senior year as a baseball player. I don't know how far the fence was, but it's at least 300. And this guy, especially with the power that he had in his swing, absolutely amazing. And there wasn't much that could get by him, if you know what I mean. Not many fastballs got by Bo Jackson. And then he was a decathlete. And if you know decathlete, just by the name, there's 10 different events that you run. He was a state champion his junior and his senior year. And there were times where he had won by so many points. By the time they got to the mile, which is the very last of the 10 events, he had such a big lead that even if somebody ran a sub 4-minute mile, he was going to win the event anyway. So sometimes he didn't even finish and run the mile. He didn't do his last event. He said, distance is the only thing that I hate about track. And he said that back in 1982. So Bo had a great high school career. He obviously accepted a scholarship offer to go to the University of Auburn, and things there changed quite quickly when he got on campus there for the Tigers.
I remember him going to Auburn and playing his freshman season in '82, and they had Tennessee on the schedule, Harper. And I had two gentlemen that came out of my neighborhood in Memphis, Tennessee, that started on defense, Carlton Peoples and Mark Studaway. And I remember after the season, you see everybody doing the Christmas holidays. And I pulled Carlton to the side and said, hey, man, tell me about Bo Jackson. He said, this guy's got a chance to be the greatest running back in college football. But the one thing he told me wasn't so much of his power, but it was his speed. And he said he looked like he was gliding on the field. And so that's when I started following Bo Jackson. I said, okay, Auburn is going to win a national championship during his time there. The next season, they come back, and they end up going to the Sugar Bowl playing Michigan. He has a decent year. Then I believe his junior year, they come back, and they rank number 1 in the country. They underachieved. They go 8-4 that year. His senior year, everybody knows Bo Jackson. Auburn is ranked number 1. They got Jeff Berger, starting quarterback over here in Cedartown, Georgia, not far from where I'm from. And I got an opportunity in September to go see him close up personal against Tony Robinson. I'm going to be honest today because we was having a little pre-show meeting, Hop, and you told me to get with it. Don't say anything till now. But I saw him on the field. And all I can remember, Tennessee ended up winning that football game 38-23, and Tony Robinson put on the show. But Bo Jackson took himself out of the game in the fourth quarter. He had like 75 yards rushing. And I know that Tennessee defense that day, led by Dale Jones and Charles Davis, they was putting that wood on him. I'm not going to be really a guy that's not going to tell the truth. I said, come on, man. You're supposed to be the best player in the country. You take yourself out of the game on national television with my boy Keith Jackson and Frank Boyles announcing it. I had a big change of opinion with Bo Jackson. I know he's a great two-sport athlete at Auburn at the time, but then I kind of wasn't a fan. He gets to the major leagues. He's get drafted by Tampa Bay, number 1 overall. But when he played baseball, and in his first 4 years, he put up 20 home runs and 100 RBIs, MVP in the All-Star game, first pitch, knocks it over the wall. I said, hold up now. He might be a better baseball player than football. Then he signed with the Raiders. We all know what happened on Monday night. The 90-yard touchdown run where he ran away from Brian Bosworth and ran in the tunnel. I said, okay, now my respect goes back to Bo Jackson. Back to you, Harper.
Yeah, that was a pretty amazing game. We'll talk about that in a minute. But going back to college, he chose Auburn because they would allow him to play both sports. He was a baseball player in high school. We mentioned that just a moment ago. He was a very good baseball player. And there are some coaches that said, nope, you're not going to do that. So he had to narrow it down. He goes to Auburn, and he rushes for 829 yards his freshman year, 1,200 yards his sophomore year, only 475 in 1984. And by the way, this is when Tony Dorsett had just finished up at Pitt. You got a guy named Herschel Walker that's in Georgia. There's some really good running backs in the country, and Bo is just getting started. He had 9 touchdowns his freshman year, 12 his sophomore year. Because of the injury, just didn't play well in 84, only had 5 touchdowns, but in 85, he has 17. He rushes for 1,700 yards, 6.6 average throughout his career, and a Heisman Trophy. So Vincent Bo Jackson in the picture there on the right, where Bo goes over the top, he had told his coach, Pat Dye, right before they made the call, he goes, I can do this. I can go over these guys. I can jump through them and get to the next level. And they call the play, and it's a legendary one for Auburn fans everywhere. I think you're accurate in that they underachieved when they were ranked number one. But you got to remember that Auburn has always been the little sister of the poor compared to Alabama in terms of recruiting, in terms of the respect that they get. They'll win a game every now and then. They haven't had the same dominance that Alabama has had. It's usually been the other way around, but he certainly made an impact while he was there on the football field. And he was a college baseball player, very good there at Auburn as well. There was a situation that occurred his senior year that I want to mention. He was drafted by the New York Yankees, and so he had that in his hip pocket, if you will. He's still playing his senior year, and then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Culverhouse family invites him to Tampa because they want to pick him number one overall in the draft. And so he goes. When he returns, he finds out that that was not an officially sanctioned SEC visit because he was a professional, so to speak, in the making for the NFL, but yet he was still participating and playing as an amateur at Auburn. There was a conflict there. And Bo ended up being pretty upset at the fact that the Culverhouses, who, by the way, Mr. Culverhouse, you went to Alabama, and there's some belief that he was doing something that would try to get Bo ineligible to play baseball for the rest of the year, and that ended up happening. But he did have, like I said, the Yankees contract in his hip pocket. He agreed to take that and play for the Memphis Chicks, a $1 million signing bonus that he got from the Yankees, and forgoes his commitment in the NFL. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers pick him number one overall. And Bo had said, if you pick me, I will not play for you. I'm not going to do it. He was so upset about the fact that his eligibility in his senior year was cut short because of that visit that he took to visit in the spring with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he ended up a fourth rounder in the supplemental draft the following year with the Raiders. And that's how he ended up becoming a Raider. It wasn't because they drafted him coming out of college. So the interesting turn of play in terms of Bo having the power, and this is what I respect him for, to make a decision to not get picked and go to Tampa and forego at least a $3 or $4 million signing bonus with the NFL and wait for something like that to happen later.
Like I said, when he didn't go to Tampa Bay and then he went to the Royals, I didn't realize he was that good a baseball player. And I didn't realize he was that athletic. I mean, the plays he made and the home runs he hit in his first 4 years with the Royals was just unbelievable. And then when the Raiders picked him up, remember they had Marcus Allen there.
Yeah.
I said, what are the Raiders doing here? And I got to thinking, I go back to his senior year at Auburn against Tennessee, and I said, well, he took himself out of the game. Is he really? I'm not saying he was strong, powerful to play the game, but I was saying to myself, is he soft? Because I go back to that day in Knoxville in '85. And when he got in the NFL, he really shocked me as being a running back and how he was able to run fast, physical, and he had the Raiders on another level. And if he wouldn't have hurt his hip, that's a big if. I think the Raiders would, in a couple of years, with his direction at the running back position, would have probably ended up in the Super Bowl. And remember, with the hip injury, it changed a lot about with that Oakland Raiders franchise, the LA Raiders at the time, because he was playing, I believe, he was playing all season in major leagues, and he was only playing a half a year in football, but he was still voted All-Pro. And he was still a guy that what he was doing on a professional level, I was just amazed, not from the baseball standpoint, but from the football standpoint, how he was able to run through people. And I said to myself, okay, what was that at Auburn? Now I can say he's in a class of his own. Back to you, Harper.
Yeah, the picture in the upper left-hand corner there is in that playoff game against Cincinnati where Bo's career took a turn for the worst. The hip injury that he suffered in that game on what was a routine-looking tackle ended up popping his hip out. Now, Bo says that the hip popped out of socket and he had to put it in. There are some doctors that go, I don't know about that. But the damage was that there's a couple of blood vessels that are in that area that got impinged and didn't allow blood to flow the way that it's supposed to. I had a navicular injury in my wrist that I know a little bit about that. I'm not a doctor or pretending to be one, but it was very serious. And your bone, if it doesn't get the proper amount of blood supply, will decay to the point where it becomes like sand after a while. At least that's what I was told. And so Bo needed surgery. He's obviously had hip surgery and replacement since then, but a game changer. Football was done, and he would be able to play baseball again, but on a very different level than what he had previously. When Bo gets at Auburn, he hadn't lifted weights before. In fact, he didn't know what to do when said, "Hey, we'll go do power cleans over there." He'd never done it before. So his natural strength, his natural ability, his natural speed was God-given. He did work on his strength, of course, and became a very powerful human being. I remember watching him once when I was with the Seahawks. We were playing the Raiders in Seattle and watching him warm up like Herschel, just a big guy. The shoulder pads were huge, took kind of different steps, but the way his feet were, he was so light on his feet, and his ability to get them down on the ground and the speed that he had, absolutely amazing watching him. I just stopped for a while. It was during warm-up, so I just looked over and watched him run these little sweeps to, one to the left, one to the right to kind of loosen himself up. Like, oh, goodness gracious, how's anybody going to catch this guy? He ran a 4.16 unofficially at the combine, and that was good enough for the Culver House family and everybody else in the NFL to go, this guy's amazing. He didn't go to he didn't do much at the combine because his philosophy was, look, I'm going to be the number one guy taken. I take that back. I made a mistake. He ran the 4.16 at Pro Day at Auburn, and he did not go to the combine. So please forgive me for misspeaking right there. He said, I'm going to be the number one player taken. I don't need to show anybody what I'm going to do. I won't be available to anyone else but the first rounder. Long story short, an amazing career. Quick story. Buck O'Neil, the famous Negro League player, was in the Kansas City Royals clubhouse, and he was having a conversation with some of the other Hall of Famers that were around, some great baseball players, some current baseball players, and then all of a sudden he hears something. And he looks around, he goes, what was that? And everybody says, what are you talking about, Buck? What do you mean, what was that? He goes, I heard it. About 5 seconds later, he hears it again. And he goes, there it is. And the guy's going, what are you talking about? And he ends up saying, excuse me, I'll be right back. He goes from the clubhouse into the tunnel that leads to the dugout. And the closer he gets, every 5 seconds, he would hear this noise. And he'd hear it again. And he just went right out into the into the dugout, and then took a couple steps out onto the field. Bo Jackson was hitting batting practice, and he was getting his pitches. And Buck goes, now I know. One of the other players followed him and said, Buck, what's the matter? He goes, no, there's nothing wrong. It's just I heard it. I've only heard that sound come from a bat and a ball out of a couple of players. And that kid right there is producing the sound that I've never heard before. He would hit a ball so hard, it made a different sound than what normal ball hitting bat would do. So even Buck O'Neil realized very early in Bo Jackson's career that there was something special about this kid. We certainly noticed that, Vincent. There was something special about him as a two-star athlete. He did some amazing things.
When you look at Bo Jackson, and my final words on Bo Jackson, when he got to the professional level, he took his game to another level from a baseball standpoint to a football standpoint. My memories of him playing at a professional level, him not being so much a guy hitting home runs, but the catches he made, clamming the wall. Now, I'm not a baseball player. Harper, you played baseball. Maybe you could tell me how difficult it is for a guy at 230 pounds with that speed to go up on the wall and make those catches. And then the football ability. When he got to the Raiders, I said, Bo Jackson is going to be maybe all right running back. I know he had speed, but man, when he got on the scene with the Raiders, it just seemed like it went to another level. His game just seemed like he started being mentioned in them lords of Peyton, Brown, Smith, Sanders. And it's a big what if. If he wouldn't got injured, It would have been very, very amazing to see where he would have ended up. Maybe in the Hall of Fame in the National Football League, and maybe in the Hall of Fame in Major League Baseball. Back to you, Hall.
Yeah, cut short because of injury and what could have been. But one of the things about Bo, he was one of the first guys, as you'll see in the center of our screen right now, the marketing that went to be a part of that. The Bo Knows commercial. My favorite commercial is the one where he's in the middle right there, just to the right. He's wearing a Montreal Canadiens jersey. He's playing hockey. And in the commercial, he's skating around and it's pretty interesting that, he's trying that. He had just tell me about this Tour de France thing, and he's on a bike and he's spinning around on a 10-speed, and then the hockey thing, and then there's a cutaway, and Wayne Gretzky comes right up to the camera while he's on the ice, and he skates very slowly, and he just shakes his head and he goes, nah. And then it shows Bo against the boards and he's clamoring, he's checking people all over the place, and the music kicks back in the commercial. One of the funniest ones I've ever seen. But the marketing, that was different. Anybody back in the early days will remember that Bo Jackson was it in Tecmo Bowl.
Yes, sir.
People would learn that wherever they were, if they got the ball, they'd give it to Bo. He'd run back to the 1-yard line, and then he would score a touchdown because there was a glitch in the game, and he could always do stuff like that. Now, I wasn't a Tecmo Bowl guy myself. I was not the biggest of video fans, but I certainly respect the folks that loved him. Darryl Green was the fastest thing around. LT, man, he was amazing in Tecmo Bowl, but so was Bo Jackson. Man, that guy in a video game. And they made a commercial with Brian Bosworth a few years later, a Kia Super Bowl commercial that was absolutely fantastic. So the marketing was amazing. His ability to impress other people like Buck O'Neill, my respect off the chain for Bo Jackson. He was an all-star in baseball. He played in the 1989 All-Star game. In 1993, he was the comeback player of the year. He was an AL MVP candidate. In 1989, he had 30 home runs. In 1989, he had 4 seasons where he hit at least 20 home runs. He had 2 seasons where he stole at least 20 bases. And in that 89 year, once again, just an outstanding year. He had over 100 RBIs. Pro Bowler, Heisman Trophy, Walter Camp Award, SEC Player of the Year, Sports News Player of the Year, UPI Player of the Year back in 1985 for Auburn. He was a unanimous All-American. He was a All-SEC first teamer in 82, 83, and 85. His number 34 was retired at Auburn. He rushed for over 2,700 yards in his short NFL career. He averaged 5.4 yards per carry. He had 18 touchdowns. He was voted into the College Football Hall of Fame. He had a tremendous baseball career. We'll talk about those numbers on another show. He had over 141 home runs. And again, a short-lived career, but Vincent Edward Bo Jackson is certainly one of the greatest athletes that we've ever seen.
There's no question about it. When you think about 2-sport athletes, both in the Major League Baseball and the NFL, you got to include Bo Jackson at the top of the list. I just hated that he had that hip injury because I wanted to really see what he would go on with his career with the NFL. Because at that time, he was breaking off runs of 90, 60 yards. He was at another level, and he was a man among boys. It's so unfortunate that he had that hip injury in the playoff game against the Cincinnati Bengals. But when you talk about 2-sport athletes at the highest level, both in baseball and football, there's 2 people that we mentioned. Bo Jackson, War Eagle, Auburn University, the LA Rams, and your former teammate, who's right now doing his thing at Colorado University, the great Deion Sanders. Back to you, Harper.
Yep, and don't forget Brian Jordan.
In all respect.
Richmond Spider, whatever their little thing is that they do, they got to add 3 more fingers in order to be able to do that. But obviously, great careers by all 3 of those guys, and certainly well-deserving of the accolades. Bo Jackson is married to Linda. She was a rehabilitation counselor. They have 3 children, and now he lives in Illinois and his charity and business ventures are prospering him quite well as he gets a little bit older. But we are honored to be able to talk about Bo Jackson and the career that he had, the track career that was included in his high school, but obviously from a collegiate and a professional level, he is one of the greatest football and baseball players to ever walk the earth. And we're glad that we got a chance to talk about him today in 100 Yards of Football. So for Jeremiah Long, our producer and engineer, for Vincent Turner, our host, I am Harper LaBelle. We want to say thank you for tuning in to another episode of Looking at the Legends. And 100 Yards of Football is so glad and happy that you got to be a part of the show today. We hope you appreciated it. And thank you for tuning in. So for all three, for Vincent, for Jeremiah, and myself, thank you for tuning in to another episode of 100 Yards of Football.